My name is Lolo Puzzlo, and this is Media Delta.
All right. So when you are listening to this, it is now the month of October, which means as a show that talks about media that are like movies and TV shows, naturally means that we should probably talk about things that are at least a little bit spooky. And since this is a video game tie-in media podcast, and especially since there is a new technically not series, a new version of it coming out. It is now perfect time for us to discuss the Netflix original series, Castlevania, which aims to kind of take the plot of Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, and Curse of Darkness, and kind of makes it, kind of animates and kind of elaborates on some plots that are relatively tied into those. Namely uses the characters of those and some some events that occurs during the time, but kind of is its own thing also. It's
some real liberties.
Yeah, it's an interesting, for lack of a better word, take on Castlevania lore and such.
Liberties as so much as you've got what lore you have with Castlevania for the most part, other than like Curse of Darkness.
And yeah, also maybe adds a little edge to it, to say the least.
A little.
In terms of adaptations, they didn't have a lot to work with Castlevania 3. I'm sure there's a lot more of Curse of Darkness. I've not played that game, to be honest, but, you know, they kind of, at a point, they worked with what they could, I guess, for better or worse.
Yeah, it's certainly a thing. But yeah, we are talking about the Netflix series Castlevania. In particular, there was 4 seasons, so this is going to be a 2-part episode. There were 4 seasons of Castlevania. 4 technically, but really it's 3.5. Season 1 came out in 2017. Had a grand total of 4 episodes. Castlevania season 2 came out the year after. And basically every year after there was a season that came out. And we are going to be discussing Castlevania season 1 and 2. Which, is, as if you were good at math, is half the series. So that's what we're discussing. So I am not the only one who is here to discuss this. So please introduce yourselves in alphabetical order.
Hi, I'm Max, and I'm wary of this one because there's so much edge, and I do not want to cut myself on it.
Can I go now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Bob Nader. You might know me from places like HT101, and I'm happy to be back. It's been a while, but I am here to talk this show that tries its best, but maybe is not as good as it could have been. We'll say. I'm the face here.
Hi, I'm Torpid Typist. And the real horror was Warren Ellison the whole time.
Yes. So we're going to do things a little bit different than how we have, well, kind of. We're going to do things the way that we've been doing in the last couple episodes, since we have started the new season. But we're going to change the questions up a little bit because this has kind of been a series that has been discussed a lot, in particular with, people who are like into games and all that, because it's based on Castlevania, but also its tone has been a little bit controversial to say the least. So there are some things specifically that I want to kind of talk about with this series, then I don't necessarily need to talk about with other things. So before we have the one-on-one discussions with the other guests here, let me quick give my general take on, just to kind of set where things have kind of gone. So basically, my take on it was, season 1 kind of came out, and it's actually kind of funny. So that actually started even before season 1 even came out. That the first thing that kind of got leaked from this thing has been in production, or like apparently it was in production a while. And what the first thing that most people knew about this was there was a leak of a script, for a little bit of the script. And it was a scene like, oh, hey, it's Castlevania script. It's going to be fight. It was a scene in a bar of people making jokes about someone having sex with a sheep. And that was what people knew about this. And just hearing like, this is going to be terrible. I did like this show should not be made. And then didn't hear about it for years. And then all of a sudden it came out. So I was kind of going into this a little bit skeptical about what it was. And based on season 1, it was okay. Season 1 is very weak. It is 4 episodes long and did not really do much other than like give the scant amount of like window dressing for what this is. Yeah, so it's it didn't really show much. It also, Castlevania is very like, I'm not one to like be like offended so much by, or like taken aback by like gore, or like Castlevania being gory makes kind of sense. However, there are other elements of it that I feel just don't really, or kind of put me off a little bit. It's a very foul show. There is a lot of cursing and just a lot of like just foul humor, so to speak, of it. There is a personal bugbear of mine. I think of the 4 episodes, 3 of them have vomiting in it, which again, like not very much I'm a metaphobic, so I did not appreciate that. And even the 4th one has mention of vomiting in it, funnily enough. And just, it really felt kind of like, it was almost like not quite a Family Guy-ish, but it was kind of, it really felt edgy for the edgy's sake. However, following season came out, season 2, and it was much longer. The thing with it is that I can understand why you have the like Council of Vampires and all that, and like why you would take a lot of time to like, oh hey, here's what the vampires are doing. The problem is it just kept up. It took too much time. Like the vampire politics just, I felt like there was a bit too much of it. But for the most part, it was pretty good. The action's really good in the show. The characters started to get more fleshed out. And it just it was turned into a pretty damn good show. That even while it was somewhat weak, you had, in terms of like pacing and all that, the characters were pretty good for the most part. We'll get into more discussion about that later. And just like, it was like it turned into like, hey, this show could be really good. And like it ended on a pretty sound note. And seasons 1 and 2, I think overall turned into, if you watch them together, turned into a really good package. That I think there's some weaknesses to it, but it's still pretty good. It's as I said, interesting, so to speak. Takes on the Belmont characters and just the other characters that show up in Castlevania 3, like Sypha, Alucard, even Dracula. Like, I think that they're pretty good characters, and this is a pretty good show. Whether or not I think it's like, I feel like it could have done a lot better, but for what we have, I think from Castlevania Season 1 and 2, I think they are, in fact, pretty decent shows. Or together are a pretty decent series. If I personally were to give it a ranking, I would think maybe, somewhere about maybe 4 or 5 is where I'm kind of personally thinking with this. So that's in general what I thought about it. Let's go ahead and ask Bob what they thought about Castlevania Season 1 and 2.
All right. I am ready to tell you all about what I think, because I have opinions.
All right. So I take it, as you are a regular on Hardcore Gaming 101, I take it your familiarity of Castlevania is pretty good.
The games or the show,
I'd say the games.
I got mixed opinions to say the least. I have a lot of what you call hot takes, but yeah, they're all right generally. I mean, the fact I'm saying all right should say a lot, but
But in general, you are familiar with the Castlevania games.
I'd say so, yeah.
Okay, so let's just kind of go through. I got some set questions for all of the other commentators here. So, what was your general impressions of the first two seasons?
Well, I kind of prefer season one to be honest, because season one there's a lot more going on. They do a lot more in setting up the characters, the general conflict, and having a lot of locations and action and just generally things happening. The problem is season two kind of has a lot less in the way of locations. You kind of focus on just a handful of places, and the characters are more or less just kind of hanging out until the very tail end of the second season. And to be fair, that tail end is pretty good, but it takes so long to get there, and it feels like there's barely anything happening to get to that point. So I would definitely prefer the first season overall.
All right, and season two you thought was just kind of okay?
Very slow, just kind of okay, yeah.
All right. What are your thoughts on the general tone of the show as given by the first two seasons?
Well, I think you're right. I think I agree with you. It's a very gross show. It's a very nasty, grody show. Kind of unpleasant overall because of all the violence. This show really focuses in on its violence, for better or worse, and it's a lot to deal with. It's a kind of not quite the point you don't really care anymore because the characters are kind of not quite unlikable. I will say that much, but I would not blame anybody for bowing out from the show just with how nasty it is.
All right. What are your thoughts on the general writing?
So I've always had a thought about this show, and I hope this illustrates things very well. This show feels like an adaptation of somebody's tabletop campaign that happens to be themed for Castlevania. Everybody in this show kind of feels like they are playing somebody and, just making a lot of jokes. It's a very quippy show, and especially the main cast loves to quip at each other, which kind of gives me that feel. I wouldn't say it's too egregious. There are some lines I thought were pretty good, but I think you do kind of need that because, it does kind of balance out the general glumness of it, if that's the word. And I think the writing is pretty okay, especially when it gets emotional. The show does get emotional at some points, and when it does, it actually does that pretty well. So I can't really fault the writing at all.
All right. What do you think about everything else, like animation, combat, the other aspects of the show?
I thought the animation was really good. I don't really know how other people think it compares with a lot of other shows of its style and of the time, but especially the fight scenes, it generally does very good fight scenes, and anytime there's a lot of gore, for better or worse, it animates that especially well.
All right. Any other thoughts about anything specific?
Well, I haven't watched seasons 3 and 4 yet, I will say that. I'm planning on it at some point, even if I hear they got a lot worse. Honestly, though, I will say, I kind of feel like you don't really need to... Okay, maybe that's wrong. I felt like where I left off for a while on season 2, the penultimate episode, that felt like a pretty good place to stop. If I had stopped there, I feel like I would have been satisfied. I did eventually watch that last episode, but I kind of feel like I almost lost something from that just because you kind of lose that nice lack of closure. You get a lack of closure with that new episode, I should say. And I think that's all I have to say on that.
All right. So in that case, what ranking would you give the combined seasons 1 and 2?
I'm gonna say
And it could also be arranged, by the way.
Let's be nice, but maybe not quite as nice as you, and say 7 or 8.
All right. Okay. So let's with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about let's talk with X about what they have to say about this. Hello.
Hi, I'm X.
Yes. So, X, what is your familiarity with Castlevania?
Okay, so I haven't played every Castlevania, but I'm pretty deeply familiar with the series. I've played most of the mainline ones. I had the that special PSP one. I think that was Rondo of Blood packaged with
yes.
Symphony. I had that and played the crap out of that. Beat the absolute shit out of Symphony multiple times. Played the PS2 one. So I'd like to say I'm quite familiar, although not deep into the lore and story and all that.
So would you have played Curse of Darkness by chance?
I tried to play a little bit of it and I just bounced real hard off of it.
Okay,
But
so
I
you're
kind of know the stuffs.
Okay, so but in general, you're not super familiar. You're familiar with Curse of Darkness, but in particular, you're probably not super familiar with Castlevania 3 and Curse of Darkness.
Well, I'm familiar. I'm familiar with the mainline stuff. It's just Curse of Darkness was one of the ones where it's like, nah, this isn't for me.
All right, so a passing so you kind of know at least a little bit of going into this about what this show covers.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so what were your impressions of the first 2 seasons of Castlevania?
Oh, goodness me. Okay, so I guess we could start with quote unquote season 1, and I say that because most shows that start off nowadays tend to do like a 6 to 10 episode run for a first season, and that's usually just to kind of establish the show, the characters, and in some ways sort of test to see if do people really like this and should we do more, and then they build upon that and they get more episodes a season, things like that. Honestly, now that I think about it, not many shows do the full 24 nowadays like you'd get from a lot of the shows back then, but I digress. So when Castlevania Season 1 was announced, I think they also announced it was only going to be a 4-episode run, which was already not the best of signs, because that's really... It felt a lot like just that announcement alone, not even getting to the show. The announcement alone, the idea that it would just be a 4-episode run, really felt like they didn't have a lot of confidence in the product, and they were hoping it would garner just enough attention to get them greenlit for a second season and possibly beyond. So when it finally came out, the animation was great. Animation quality of this, and this is just going to be sort of a straight through. All 4 seasons of this have a great animation quality. And then it introduces us to the main story. Dracula's wife gets murdered because the church are fucking assholes, which tracks, yeah. And then a year later, he returns to basically bring all of his monsters upon the world and wipe everything out. Basically, just it starts off as sort of a revenge, but then just becomes more of a very petty, very tantrumish sort of assault on the world. But that's for a little bit later. So season 1 doesn't do a very good job of establishing the show. I did not feel it did a good enough job establishing the characters, establishing their motives fully, really giving us any kind of investment in what was it, Wallachia, I believe it was.
Wallachia, I believe.
Wallachia. Wallachia, that's right, Wallachia. I knew it was one. Anyway, so it doesn't really give us a lot to work with. It just goes, okay, here's your main character, here's your secondary main character, and they go on for a while, and then at the end, here's your third main character, end of season, what do you think? And it really, if you're going to do that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, at a base level, to have 4 episodes in a season. That's okay, but you got to do something with that. And I felt like the only time the show really did anything with itself in the end of the end of the first season, the 4th episode. And that was mostly just the library sections with Trevor and Sypha, because it actually helped develop the characters and their relationship to one another, as well as to establish an actual rapport between them. And that scene, those scenes alone were like the best part of that entire season because it had more depth to it than everything else did. Everything else is like, oh, you know, Trevor's all blah 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 blah, and the monsters are roaming. Everybody's unhappy, and then it also kind of leans a little too far into. It's a very grimdark show. It's very grimdark, and one of the things that a lot of these shows that do grimdark do, especially post-apocalyptic, is the mistreatment of women as society breaks down. And that gets brought up, I believe, pretty quickly, and I'm pretty sure it was episode 1. And it's such an unnecessary thing because there's always this assumption that when society breaks down, one of the first things people are going to probably do is go on a full-on raping spree. Or they'll use, I mean, like, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but you don't have to go to that every time you do post-apocalyptic. You can focus on other aspects of the terribleness of humanity without having to do that. But that's also another digression and another topic I have an issue with when it comes to horror-related media. But we don't establish a whole hell of a lot with the characters outside the most basic aspects of them. And they don't feel fleshed out. It doesn't feel like the world is fleshed out. So season 1 just falls completely flat, except for the library scenes with Trevor and Sypha. And then it ends with Alucard waking up and the three of them going, hey, you know, we should probably kill your dad, Dracula. And Alucard's like, okay, yeah, that's right. Okay. So season 1, done. Season 2, a lot stronger. There's still a little over grimdarking that the show does, but it does introduce something interesting, and that is a completely different kind of Dracula than any other Dracula we've seen aside from Dracula Dead and Loving It. And that is a Dracula who is tired. He is weary of his own war. He starts this war with humanity because, for a good reason, honestly. I'd wipe a whole group of people out if my wife got murdered brutally by people. But anyway, so at the point in the story where we see Dracula in season 2, he's fucking checked out. He is so done with everything, but he continues it going out of principle, out of pride. And around him are the machinations of other vampires, particularly Camilla. I'll just go with Camilla. So Camilla's, you know, running around trying to do stuff behind Dracula's back, but it doesn't matter because Dracula's checked out. He doesn't give a shit. It would have more weight if Dracula was aware and ready and, you know, trying to do all this stuff. But really, it's just kind of like it's kind of like running past a Girl Scout setup and just grabbing a box of cookies and booking it down the street as fast as you can. It's basically what Camilla does throughout the series. But I liked Sad Dracula. I liked the idea of what if the villain, the ultimate villain, does what they said they were going to do, but they find no pleasure in it. They find no joy in it. The very experience drains them to the point where everybody around them just does whatever the fuck they want. And I think that's a much more interesting take than what if Dracula's the ultimate evil badass like we've seen in every single fucking Castlevania game. Except for, like, I think there's a couple that don't have him as the ultimate villain. But it's such a nice change of pace. It's just a shame that too much of the show is spent on the politics. There's not enough spent on the adventure and the journey, and it really tries to be more of a political, a weirdly vampiric political thriller than it is an action-adventure horror title. And I feel like if it was done with something else, it might have. It's a very much like a number of different things that have come out. If Resident Evil by Anderson came out and it wasn't called Resident Evil, it would have been a much better horror movie because it's not tied down to a property with pre-existing lore and expectations. Castlevania has a lot of the same problem. There's an interesting story being told, but it's being held down by its strong, if not complete, connection to a pre-existing gaming franchise that has its own stories, lore, characters, motives, and so on. So they're already trying to adapt that and add some twists and turns to it, but they go and they add too much of the politics. That takes away from everything else that's going on. You know, if there was more emphasis on Sypha and Trevor and their relationship as it grows, because I don't feel like it grew quite organically. I feel like it just sort of like they're together, they meet up, and then season 2 they hang out, and they fight evil, and then later seasons, they're in love. Like there's really not much of a growth there that I felt from a writing perspective, from a character arc perspective. But since we're just talking about the first 2, I'll try to stick to them. So season 2 is really just the 2 of them cop buddying up, and Alucard's there for the ride. And Alucard is interesting because he's not interesting. Alucard as a character in Symphony of the Night was campy, because the whole game's campy, but he was still kind of interesting. He was rebellious. He had some emotion. And Alucard in this version is kind of a basic bitch, really. Just this pasty. I mean, he's going to be pasty, but it all kind of, it's just this boring, bland, I'm super cool and sexy with my soft voice. And it's just, I feel like they could have done something cooler and more different with Alucard, but they went with the most obvious direction with him, and it wasn't that great, to be honest. But it's Alucard. He's arguably one of the more popular characters in the franchise. So of course they're not going to do anything but cool him up as much as they can. What else? There is Godbrand, who was basically the comic relief for the 4 or 5 episodes he was allowed to live before being, completely destroyed. But it was great to have Peter Stormare. Peter Stormare is absolutely fantastic just about every single thing he does. He's just a really good actor. And he's so much fun to just listen to. And even doing voice acting, he can still chew a scene up completely. It's so good. So there's a lot of there are good points to this. Again, the animation's really great. Most of the voice acting is actually pretty spot on. And I'd say overall it's good, but you can tell there's sort of they're not quite sure how far to take it. And sometimes they end up accidentally taking it a little too far. And then when they do that, they don't pull back and go, okay, hold on, let's find ourselves again. They just sort of go, oh, we went too far. Sunk cost fallacy. Let's go farther, which we'll see later on. But overall, if you put seasons 1 and 2 together, it's actually not bad. But if you were to separate them, season 1 is such a low point. It's not the lowest, but it's a low point just from the start. Whereas 2, it feels like they're starting to get into the flow of things. They're starting to actually build the characters up and starting to give everything a lot more depth, a lot more explanation, a lot more backstory and lore. Like they're starting to build things up and move towards something interesting. However, a bit of that kind of falls apart at the end of season 2 because they kill Dracula. Alucard deals the fatal blow. And while that could have led to a much more interesting soul-searching kind of thing, holy shit, I just killed my father. Like that's a pretty big conundrum, or a word for that. To have to deal with the burden of that, the damage that will cause. And spoiler alert, they don't really do that. But it does kind of leave a weird feeling of, okay, where can they take this with? Because Camilla is not a compelling villain. She's not that interesting. It's basically just it's girl boss, but in like the bad way. Like obvious, like, oh, there was actually a good quote from her that was actually good, but I'm trying to put this thought into words because the one thing she brings up about how Dracula's uselessness has made the vampiric army kind of weak because he's just incapable of following through. and she's fed up with, the fact that a lot of the women vampires are basically subservient to the male vampires, and they have their own aspirations, they have their own ideas, and they want to enact them. And she laments that the war is being run by incompetent men. And that's pretty great. But then, like, there's not much more ambition to her other than that. Like, Dracula's like, oh, I'm going to wipe out humanity. And then he's like, that's probably not a great idea. And then that's when he starts to retreat into, his fugue. But with Camilla, it's just a one direction thing. I'm going to wipe out humanity. Well, what are you going to do after that? I'm going to wipe out humanity. Like, there's so much more depth that she could have been given, and she wasn't given enough. So it just tried to rest entirely on the badass female character. But there wasn't much more there, at least in my opinion. I could be totally wrong on this assessment of it. But from what I got of it, they didn't really give her enough depth. And that actually does happen to a number of characters. Particularly, I want to say Hector. Hector just gets a rough ride throughout the entire series, and it's very boring. Like, very quickly becomes super boring. And I don't feel like Isaac's arc really lands anywhere. But again, those are things that to say now, but also come back to later, because we come full circle. That's the big problem with is there's some characters who get really decent arcs, who get some really great scenes, some really good dialogue, and then there's some characters who are just there for you to watch them get the shit kicked out of them, and that's it. Like, they have no real value or purpose to the story, and it's weird that they did that, because I just don't. It just doesn't work well with what they were doing. Sometimes it feels like they might be trying a few too many storylines, and they just drop the ball. But if I were to give an overall summary, if I were to give just a quick review, is that it's a slow and rough start, but starts to pick up in the second season.
All right. So in that case, what rankings would you give the combined seasons 1 and 2?
Yeah, combined for this, I'd put it at 9.
All right.
If you wanted them separately, 1 is a 20.
Yeah, it ain't good.
It's not.
All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and once I figure out where my things are. There you are. All right. Well, let's figure that out. Let's go ahead and get Torpo's thoughts on Castlevania seasons 1 and 2. Hello.
Hi.
So, you are generally familiar with Castlevania, correct?
Correct. I've played a lot of them, yes.
Yeah. So, you are generally familiar with the lore that this is based on, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, what do you think about the first 2 seasons?
That's a lot. So to clarify, I myself am not going off of memory today. I watched all of them as a refresher, and I'll start off by saying the first season is 4 episodes long, and I would argue for what it did, that's too many.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't call it a season either.
That might as well. They might have should have tied that in together as one thing.
It was a arc that was longer than it needed to be, in a way that was not in any way satisfying. In the entire first 4 episodes, which are the season 1, basically the entire thing is just fuck the church. It does nothing with Dracula. The Belmont, fucking Trevor isn't used in any meaningful way. Sif isn't. It's just all about the church and being edgy, to the point where at one point, one of the most fucking ham-fisted scenes I've ever seen in a show in my life is a demon talking with a priest about how corrupt he is and how God has left that place. And it was, it was awful. To clarify, I forgot to mention this. I like the show. I enjoy it, but it could be better, is kind of the issue. I say that definitely the first season, but also 100% the second season, which also has no concept of pacing. Neither season does, but especially not the second. I did some numbers while I was watching through, and it's kind of amazing how much of the second season just has nothing to do with the Belmonts at all.
Yep.
And it's just this weird attempt at also tying in other games, and it's super clumsy. There's some good there's some good that is the thing. The writing, take it or leave it. There's some good jokes here and there, but a lot of it's just kind of ham-fisted or edgy. And then the actual animation solid, and the fight scenes are really good. Really good. That's my opinion on the first two seasons.
Yeah. Actually, might as well get this question out of the way, since to go a little bit elaborate on it. What are your thoughts on the writing of the first two seasons?
Oh boy, I like Trevor. I like Sypha. They're fun characters. Everything else, not as much. I kind of like the Dracula, but the Alucard is an edgelord. He's a petulant child. He is just an angry teen throughout the entire thing, and it's tiresome and not what Alucard ever was. Like, because Alucard was always pretty level-headed, well-spoken, all that. This was just kind of angry at Trevor, and that's it.
The thing that, and we have not discussed this show on Media Delta for maybe certain reasons, like that it's bad. But the thing that Alucard's personality in this reminded me of was he is basically, they made him dress up like the Castlevania Alucard, which they got pretty much right. Except then they made him act like the Captain N version of Alucard, but without the skateboard. It's just more cursing.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's also, like, once again, talking about the writing, the pacing is abysmal in every way, shape, and form. Holy fuck, the pacing is bad. It is absolutely atrocious how bad the pacing is. Because, as I said, the first episode, the first season is 4 episodes. They don't even leave the same town that really has no purpose. It doesn't matter. But it's just there to say, hey, church bad, as well as go, also, this is why this entire thing is happening, which, like, I don't care. I don't need to know Dracula's tragic backstory, and even then, it didn't need to take an entire episode, and then still expound on it more in later episodes.
Yeah.
Like, season 2 starts with a solid 8 minutes of more of Dracula's tragic backstory, which is what we already knew, but drawn out.
Uh-huh.
Which is specifically the murder of his wife. It is a show that has no concept of what to do with its time. To start with, that is, once again, the first season, which is just about how angry Warren Ellis is about the church. How incredibly fucking angry Warren Ellis is about the church and nothing else. You could skip the first season and miss nothing aside from how Trevor and Sypha meet and how they meet Alucard. But really, you don't need to know that. And then season 2, I never crunched the numbers, but to go over it really quickly at how bad it is with pacing, where did I write them down? So I did numbers of, like, the amount of time spent on the vampire politics, which are pretty widely regarded as the least fucking interesting thing possible, in relation to how much time is spent with the Belmont crew. And to give a quick rundown, going from episodes 1 to 8, these are vampire politics / Belmonts. In terms of minutes, it is 19 to 5 in the first episode, 11 to 13 in the second, 14 to 10 in the third, 19 to 4 in the fourth, 16 to 5 in the fifth, 8 to 15 in the sixth, 2 to 23 in the seventh, and 12 to 15 in the last one.
Yeah, it really did not need to be that ratio. Way balances. It is way out of balance.
It felt like they were padding because they didn't know what to do with their time.
Yeah.
Which, like, there's an entire adventure through the fucking castle that you could have done more with, but they didn't.
Actually, now that I think about it, what would have been a much more interesting take on Castlevania and what it should be, what if you did the raid but castle?
Yeah.
Or like that Dread movie. but Castlevania.
Like
That would
there's a
have been
lot
more
to the
interesting.
castle. There's so much to the
Yeah.
castle.
It is a creature of chaos.
It has so many different environments and settings in it. But actually, they do nothing with the castle. There is the only things that happen within the castle action-wise are in the foyer.
Yeah.
Literally
is-
the entrance to the castle, aside from the fight with Dracula, which goes through a few rooms, but those are mostly bedrooms.
Block 1, 2 from the first Castlevania is where the entirety of the action takes place.
It's so frustrating how poorly realized, really, it is. Speaking of things they didn't use from the game, let's talk about the music.
Yeah. They used a grand total of one song from Castlevania, a series that is known for its music. And I
Yep,
can't even remember, like, the music in the rest of the show is not.
It's pretty bog
Fair.
standard orchestral shit.
Yeah.
It's very standard, but it was really, really nice when they did their rendition of Bloody Tears during the
Yeah.
climax of season 2.
yeah.
And it was great. And then they never do spoilers, they never do anything with it in seasons 3 or 4 either.
Yeah. That might as well just be something we're going to get out of the way for season 3 and 4, because it's not like there's other stuff to talk about.
There's so much to talk. But yeah, so that is actually a consistent issue, is how little they actually do with the source material, and it's very much more like Warren Ellis writing Castlevania fan fiction.
Yeah. I will say, though, the one thing that I did forget, or one thing that they did do, I think in season 1, there was that segment that was in a clock tower style environment. That's about it.
Yup. That's about it, because hey, Dracula's gears and shit.
Castle Cagliostro is more of a Castlevania.
I mean,
Oh,
also the
granted.
controller for the castle was the save thing from
Oh,
Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just, it is the purest form of wasted potential, and instead just used to anywhere from edgy shit to fucking Warren Ellis to soapbox about the church.
Yeah, like, what were your thoughts on the general tone? Like, the whole, like...
I like Trevor, I like Sypha. Everything else is a bit much, ranging from super edgy to just kind of dumb. Carmilla fucking sucks so much.
Yeah.
Godbrand gets fucking jobbed in the third episode, even though he, for one scene, is the most interesting character. His other scenes are more vampire politics, so who gives a shit, but... What was I gonna say? Also, to give you another idea as to how bad the pacing is, season 4, they spend 4 episodes in the Belmont Library. There's a really, really cool fight at the end of it, but...
Oh, you mean at the end of season 2?
Season 2, yeah, I meant season 2, sorry. In season 2, they have 4 episodes spent in the Belmont Library.
I forgot.
4.
I can't remember now if it's later season or not. Is this where they tie into Leon?
Yes, where there's a portrait of Leon, and they mention that he is the progenitor of the Belmont clan.
Yeah. Okay, I couldn't remember if that was later on.
Is why they never actually address the fact that the Belmonts are French.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, and I feel like there were better writers who could have done the job. And unfortunately, the pacing is atrocious, because basically it felt more like so little was happening early. Like so little was happening in the library, specifically so they could have more vampire politics.
Uh-huh.
Fuck me. There's a lot I dislike about the vampire politics. I do kind of like depressed, angry Dracula, but also more importantly, Isaac is the most interesting character to come out of it. Hector is a miserable sop huge into femdom, but Isaac is actually pretty interesting, and he goes places.
Yes. Later,
unfortunately, but I still think he's decent in season 2.
Yeah.
He's also the one who jobs Godbrand, who's voiced by Peter Stormare, and this show has reminded me that I don't like Peter Stormare's voice. There's one part where he sounds exceptionally checked out.
Yes, I remember us having a discussion about that, and just you clip that and listening to it is like you can hear his clenching that Jack Daniels bottle.
Yeah, it was rough.
For the it's yeah, not terrible.
In general, his
performance.
delivery is good, but just like when he's talking the vampire politics, you can also skip the I learned this because I've seen this before. This is a refresher. You can skip the vampire politics, and in my opinion, miss nothing.
Yeah.
Having cut up those episodes myself.
Yeah. All right. So with that, what is your general ranking for seasons 1 and 2 combined?
Okay, so once again, I need to emphasize I did enjoy this. I enjoyed this show quite a bit. It's just the frustration of knowing it could be better, and I'm really hopeful for the next series, which is being done by different people. So I would say probably like a 6, 5, 7, somewhere around there, 5 to 7.
5 to 7?
Yeah, I think that's about right for me.
All right. So, I guess with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get everyone in so we can discuss some key points about this series, in particular these first 2 seasons. All right. So now that we are all here, let's kind of talk about, before we actually give this set of ranking, let's kind of go over some key points. Namely, let's have a quick discussion about the heroes, quote unquote, of the show. In particular, really in this case, it's the trio of Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard. General impressions I'm getting is that Trevor is pretty decent, as is Sypha. Alucard, maybe not so much.
Alucard is kind of a big reason why the show is kind of just a little bit miserable.
The thing that when I was talking with Torpo about it, it's the thing that my personal take on Alucard about this is the thing with Alucard in the show is that his personality in this reminds me of basically they dressed him up really close to the games or like the game's Alucard, and then gave him the personality of the Captain N Alucard, but made him swear more instead of a skateboard.
He really does come off as an angry teen. He's needlessly antagonistic the whole way through, especially compared to actual Alucard in the series, who's very well spoken, very level headed, just an all around pretty decent guy.
And also, like, from a vocal standpoint, Alucard's so boring. He has the absolute most boring expressions of the 3 main characters. He doesn't really emote much, and when it does, it's just petulant anger. It doesn't feel like there's much depth to him as a character other than, well, it's Alucard. You remember him from Symphony of the Night? He's cool, and that's pretty much it.
No, I like this Alucard in his ASMR ass voice.
Yeah, like even in like Robert Belgrade in Symphony of the Night, his performance was like, it was like kind of level spoken, but it was when he wanted to, he could do some emoting, like in particular during the succubus fight. Like he can get like decent emotion out of it, and it feels like in this show, and I don't know if it's the right word, he feels petulant in this show. Like
Absolutely.
he doesn't feel like he feels like a teenager, which is he's younger, but it's kind of frustrating how much of a child he acts like.
I guess the point is, where I'd say he doesn't have a lot of energy to him. Does that sound about right?
He's got a lot of angry baby energy.
Yeah. The energy, it's the wrong energy.
It kind of undercuts his fight with Dracula, his dad, because this is supposed to be, a son essentially being forced to take his own father out. And any kind of like drama between that is just destroyed by the fact that he's just an angry teen, but he's a vampire. So
I'd argue it's like more an issue. He's a damn Peter, thank you. More an issue of the fact that he doesn't react to his having to murder his dad.
Right? Yeah, like
The emotions are completely one-sided in the huge climax, which is the fight between them and Dracula.
That's what I said in my section is that, you know, him killing Dracula should be this, but he's his son. This is his family. This is his father. And in order to save the world, he's got to kill his own father. And that could lead to some seriously good drama. And they're like, oh, but what if he just doesn't react to it? You know, it's like...
Well, that's the weird thing, is all of the emotion is one-sided. Dracula has a literal breakdown when he realizes he's killing his kid.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't like he have a like he has like a small moment in like the last episode, if I remember correctly, of season 2, right? Where
it's no, not the last. It's episode 7. Actually, he's dead by the time 8. 8 is an epilogue.
No, I didn't.
I might add.
Yeah,
Alucard.
Alucard. Yes, he cries at the very end because he's sad and alone in his dad's castle.
To be honest, I'd call that the stand-up point of the season. Like, I was trying not to get into spoilers about the show actually does okay when it gets emotional. That's actually like one of the most memorable parts of the season.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
It's just the actual fight is very one-sided in terms of emotion.
Yeah.
It's kind of more my issue.
The like, I'd say 95% of Alucard's time is spent not really being all that interesting, and then you finally get just that bit at the end, and it's like, you could have done this for the whole season. It'd be much more interesting. But on the opposite side of it, there's Dracula, who is, as I said, is in my bit, is one of the more interesting takes on Dracula I've seen in.
I was gonna say, I do like him. I do like him a lot. Unfortunately, is everything around him.
Yes, exactly. But if you just focus on him, if you're only able to focus on him, you could see how like he's a much more nuanced Dracula versus just, oh, he sucks blood, blah. But like, this is one that's got emotion. He's worn the fuck down. Like, his entire campaign against humanity has dragged on for so long and has drained him and his resources so much. And at the point that we see him in 2, he's like, man, I'm so fucking done with this, but I can't stop because, you know, pride and all that. But it's so great to see him sort of like beaten down already, and then the final fight against him, he's got to pick himself back up and, you know, actually fight again. But then he realizes that he's basically killing his child, and, you know, his love and affection for his wife, you know, into this child, and basically, like, that's so cool. That's cool. It's such a good dramatic like turn for this character.
So cool that he's killing his kid.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. It's radical, man. No, but it's a great dramatic turn for the character, and it's just frustrating because, like you said, everything around it.
Yeah, well, it's why I mentioned actually in my bit, I really like the angry, depressed Dracula because he's a little bit relatable, but also
I mean,
a little bit.
It's kind of what makes sense, right? This basically immortal guy who just has this big grudge over one thing and just can't let it go.
It's like, so like that was kind of the big thing too. It's that he was never that interested in it in the first place. It's something he did in a fit of anger and then just kind of was all in.
Right, but then like once the anger dissipated, he realized it was nothing. But he was like you said, he was sunken cause fallacy. He's already in it so deep. You just keep it going, but he's so tired. You could tell he's just so fucking tired of it.
He was, yeah.
Which makes Alucard all the more frustrating because his dad is this really deep and nuanced character, and Alucard is, hey, it's Alucard from Symphony of the Night.
Any depth he gets is literally at the end where he fucking breaks down, but otherwise, yeah. Where it is like, Trevor and Sypha go through a lot. Like, a lot emotionally. Might I add, really quick, their voice actors are incredible.
They are. Yes. They are so good.
Yeah, because I believe Robert Armitage did a really good job as Richard Armitage, who did a really good job as Trevor. Apparently he's done stuff beforehand. This is the first time I've heard his voice, and he did I'll say I'm not a huge fan of, well, I find it weird what they did with Trevor in this. But what I cannot say is that Richard Armitage did not do a damn good job for what they did for Trevor. Also, Sifa's voice actress is also, from what I remember, did not do a whole lot before this. Like Winx Club, I think, is like the only thing that's like.
I mean, that's pretty.
It's also the thing of like, I love it when this credit's given in that and Red Dead Redemption 2, she is the local pedestrian population.
The entire one.
Also, oh wait, that's not. Well, that okay. I thought that was Nier Automata. No, that's not Nier Automata. Also, that was after this, and like IMDb is weird when it comes to things. But yeah, she wasn't in a whole lot before this. But she did a damn good job of this.
Yeah. I mean, the both characters had incredibly good chemistry, and honestly, spoilers for the rest of them, but I think they're the two best characters in the whole damn series. And their back and forths were always entertaining and interesting.
I kind of alluded this before, but I think like the whole back and forth between the main cast is for like the best part of this show. Because I was saying before, it kind of gives me the vibe of like a tabletop group, like of people just are very familiar with each other. So people have a lot of chemistry and know how to bounce off each other. Does that seem about right?
I can see that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Yeah,
it's also funny because actually going to Alucard, since it's part of the trio, Alucard's voice actor. Also, I should particularly call out let's see, Alejandra. I feel bad because I'm going to mispronounce his name. Alejandro Reynoso.
What character is this?
The voice actress for Sifa did a particularly good job as her, but also James Callis, who did Alucard, did a pretty he did a good job. Like, I don't think the voice actor did.
No, it was the writing. ASMR Alucard was perfectly fine.
It's actually kind of interesting that a majority. It's like the disparity between like known actors and non-known actors are pretty good. Like Richard Armitage has been in notable things about that. Bill Nighy was in this. Oh, nope. He is in the later bit. Thank you, IMDb, for not sorting this right.
Yeah, we don't need to spoil that Malcolm McDowell's in the next season.
but I mean, I mentioned it. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Maybe I was the only one. But Peter Stormare is in season 2.
I feel like that is like the one thing that people bring up about season 2 is like, oh shit, Stephen Dormare.
Godbrand's goddamn amazing. Yeah.
No, he isn't though. You remember the one good scene, but you forget the vampire politics where you just get to hear Peter Stormare's funny accent talk about fucking vampire bullshit for God knows how long.
I am honestly trying to remember what Godbrand actually did in this show because I don't remember.
A dream where he was cool and said a funny thing and then got jobbed by Isaac.
He sucked and died.
He literally sucked and died.
See, I told you so much of season 2 is just nothing until the last episodes.
Also, I do want to point out one thing, apparently, is that I found out that apparently it's going to be interesting because apparently in Nocturne, which is the next series of this, apparently they got the original voice actor of Alucard in the Japanese version to do Alucard.
Ooh,
where he also does
nice
because he also the person who did that also did like Zero from Mega Man in there. So it's they got Nocturne of the Moonlight had a lot better voice cast than Symphony of the Night did. But regardless, I think that the voice actors did a damn good job. Like I can say across the board, did a really good job.
I would say even as much as I dislike Carmilla, her voice actress did a great job.
Let's actually switch over to, not necessarily because I think we talked about Dracula enough. And actually, I think this is probably just going to be a conversation about Carmilla because, boy howdy, if there's a character I dislike most in this show.
And not even like the reason that you're supposed to dislike a villain. I don't know. I don't know if y'all agree with me on this.
I think she's terribly written.
she's so one-dimensional.
She
like,
is a
so
straw
completely-
man made by Warren Ellis. Let's be real here, everyone.
I mean, that's true, and also like going like straight from Dracula to her is just such a drop in quality.
Cause
Yeah.
she's fucking she-woman man-hater club kind of levels of ridiculous.
Yeah, pretty
It's-
much.
It's hey, what if we? It is like, it's almost like SEO like creation for a character of like, hey, like, hey, lesbian vampire, whatever, like blood, girl boss gatekeep.
Yeah.
Literally
whatever.
that though, she is
Hate men. Hates men.
gatekeep gaslight girl boss. That is her
Yeah.
entire shtick, actually.
Like the one scene I mentioned in my bit, the one scene where she laments how Dracula is basically just completely washed up. He's not helping the cause, and I forget the exact line, but I think it had something to do with she's tired of petulant men, and things like that. And in that context of that scene, it's actually pretty good. But then when you look at the overall series as well as Ellis in general, you see how it's actually meant to be like it's him projecting his hatred of women onto this one character, and it fucking sucks because she could have been a much more compelling and interesting, foil to Dracula if we had Dracula throughout the series. But then, we leave Dracula to pick her up, but she has no development. There's nothing to her. It's just an incel's idea of a woman.
Yeah, to clarify for those, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but Warren Ellis is a sex pest. This is confirmed. This is well known. This came out during the 4th season of the show, actually.
Mm.
Yeah, and also to clarify about Carmilla. Carmilla is based off of like an actual thing, if I
One
remember
of the most
correctly.
famous vampires, noted lesbian vampire Carmilla.
So
Yes.
yeah, like there's precedent. Like she wasn't just made for this, and also she was like the boss in Castlevania that no one remembers because
she's the lady who hangs out on the floating skull.
She came out in 2. She's the face in 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I can understand why you bring her, but also I feel like it was like almost like a rub hands moment of like, hey, I can do something good, quote unquote,
There's
good with this.
so
but
much better you can
also-
do with the OG Sapphic vampire Carmilla. Like
The
Yeah.
other thing too is just once you find out who Ellis is, everything about this series, everything wrong with the series, kind of helps make sense.
I'm going to kneecap any following discussion because we need to talk about it for 3. But yeah, we have this comes a lot more.
Not going to go any further, but
yeah, in 3, like 3 and 4, it
also to clarify, there's nobody else to talk about with vampire politics, setting aside the Forge Masters because they are beasts all their own. There's a bunch of vampires that appear during vampire politics time, but don't matter and get killed in an instant.
yeah.
and ultimately the politics don't fucking matter anyway because Dracula's already pretty much out of commission, and they're all running around like they're doing this behind his back. He doesn't care. He's not.
And
he's
then they
not
get
really
ripped to
there.
shreds.
Yes,
And they get
exactly.
ripped to shreds.
Exactly. None
They're
of it
just there
goes
to be-
anywhere.
They're just there to be fight scene fodder, more or
Yeah.
less.
Like
But
Carmilla
just-
even attempts a coup at the end that
it
fails
doesn't
because
matter.
the main cast teleports away the castle, so it didn't matter.
Yeah. It didn't matter anyway, and again, because Dracula's dead. So, like, the coup didn't fucking matter. Like, all the politics wouldn't have been quite so bad if it had some weight and had some actual effect on the plot. It's
The most
just there to drag it along.
The most that comes out of it is that we learn that Hector's big into femdom and gets collared by Carmilla.
That's more of a discussion for 3. Like that, it starts here, it gets worse.
Yeah, so basically, they're 2 Forge Masters. They're carryovers from, what is it, Lament of Innocence?
It's Curse of Darkness.
Is it Curse
Was
of
it?
Darkness? Okay.
I thought one was Lament of Innocence, or are they
Lament.
both?
So Lament of Innocence was Leon.
Is that Leon?
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
Lament of Innocence. Let me double check, but I can almost guarantee you that Lament of Innocence is Leon, which you get seen a portrait. Yes, that's Leon. Curse of Darkness is the pseudo sequel to 3. That is where Hector and Isaac came from. That I've never played,
Yeah.
but
It's very good, I might add. But yeah, it's so they both get their own thing. Isaac is a forge master who's big into flagellation and very much cares deeply about Dracula and believes in him to the core. And this sets him up for being a very interesting character and where he goes in the next seasons.
Yeah.
I still say he is the more interesting one as opposed to Hector, who is basically constantly lamenting his station and how awful his childhood was, which it was, but he uses that as his excuse to side with Dracula, as well as later Carmilla, because he's very easily taken advantage of.
He's also very one note too, because that's his whole existence in the show is the whipping boy. He's there for you to just watch him be brutalized, and he'll cry about it, and that's about it. Like there's just nothing to his character.
He has no spine.
Yeah.
But whereas Isaac literally kills Godbrand. He fucking jobs the shit out of Godbrand. And it's, as much as it sucks to see Godbrand go, it's kind of cool seeing Isaac fuck him up that good.
Look,
Like, it
Peter
sets
Stormare
Isaac
is
up-
probably very expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. But it sets up Isaac to be an actual force to be reckoned with, opposite of Hector, who's fucking useless.
But yeah, so there's those two, which ultimately Dracula throws Isaac through a mirror into the desert to free him. And Hector ends up stuck collared by Carmilla in where they were going to stage the coup. And yeah, that's basically everything for vampire politics. As I said, there's a lot of faces, a lot of supposedly powerful vampires who appear, but are ultimately utterly slaughtered in the first 10 minutes of the 7th episode.
You know what this show really needs? It needs like a fan edit. I think this show would be really good with like a strong fan edit.
I mean, yeah.
Mine would just have all of Hector's parts cut out.
I mean, so I mentioned before, but aside from a little bit of context for Isaac, you can mostly skip out on all the vampire politics.
Yeah.
Because like anything involving Hector is set up for the next season. Anything else with Carmilla constantly bitching doesn't matter. And nobody else matters. Godbrand gets fucking jobbed and ultimately doesn't have any purpose other than to be Godbrand, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like they built him up to be a character that was like, hey, this is going to be a fan favorite character. And then, yeah.
They kill him off in like the
They
third
kill him
or
off
fourth
because,
episode.
oh shit, we can't have Peter Stormare. We need other.
Now, Malcolm McDowell, on the other hand.
Look, Malcolm McDowell, good actor. I bet you he's not expensive.
I'll do that for $1.
I'm pretty certain that Malcolm McDowell's been on record that he just does whatever because he can get whatever money he wants.
No, it's the what is it? The Willem Dafoe school of thought.
Or the John Carpenter, hey, what do you feel about royalties or whatever?
It is where you are well enough off in your career and financially that you can do whatever the fuck you want.
I put out my hand and a check appears.
Yeah, that's specifically for Halloween.
Yeah.
But still, it's life goals.
Yes.
But yeah, so as I said, it's kind of a shame how much time is wasted.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned in my end, the pacing in this is atrocious, just absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, I think we should actually probably move on to like that because it's like, yeah, I think universally the pacing is bad. Like, I don't even know if we need to have a discussion. So I think everyone brought that up, that the pacing really sucks. At least, especially starting out. It gets better, but
The
show
7th
has a
episode
massive
is the
pacing.
best episode because shit always happens.
Yes.
I also like the raid on the library was also very good.
Yes.
Shame you spent
Like,
4
which was, like-
episodes there.
That was my
Yeah.
favorite. My favorite part of the 4th episode was the library, like the whole fight scenes in that. Like I felt like it was well paced, but also I feel like it was the strongest point for both Trevor and Sypha in this season because it really kind of bonds them together and it really showcases their chemistry. Probably the best
Yeah.
of the scenes.
Yeah.
Whereas Alucard is there third wheeling so hard.
Yeah. Also, it's hey, here's the vampire killer.
Yeah, or Morningstar as it's called. In this-
It's
in
the
some
vampire
game.
killer.
To be fair, not
Vampire
all
killer.
games call it the vampire killer.
But it's Vampire Killer.
Also, if you're gonna whatever, I was gonna say if you're going to call it the Morning Star, you're not even calling it the best weapon in Castlevania 2.
You're damn right.
Anyway,
Yeah, so the pacing is bad. I recited the numbers in my bit, but really there's so much time spent on vampire politics and so little spent with the main cast. But ultimately, as we went over, it amounts to nothing. So that is all your time wasted.
yeah, I think that's good because I think we kind of went over the writing, how it's kind of not that great sometimes, and just in general, combat, like the action, art, animation, very good. All right, I think we've had enough of discussion about Castlevania Season 1 and 2. I think it is time to actually rank this. So, we are going to rank this using our normal 1 to 21 scale. 1 being absolute mastercraft, can't really get much better than this. And 21, which is not even fun ironically to watch, or you can have very little ironic fun to watch.
Actually, really quick, can we talk about the art and that it's very good?
Yes,
It's so
the art is
good.
very good.
The action is fantastic.
Very
Yes.
good animation. Very
Very
good set
fluid.
pieces.
The animation is terrific. If anything, that it makes the show worth it just to see it.
Yes.
Unless you just watch all the good parts, which you could also do.
Any of the fights are very good, and I will stand by this.
Oh, there's
I
one thing
agree.
about the animation that I was thinking of is like thinking of like the vampire politics that kind of bugs me is that this has a problem that I notice a lot in Western animation where people are just standing still in just various different positions and mostly just talk with their hands.
You don't talk with your hands?
I mean, I do, but also it's like it reminds me of like way people talk in this reminds me of the way people talk in Archer.
Yes. Yes, I agree. You're
Like
right.
I said, the show is like 90% quipping.
It's like, I get it. Action is expensive, but also
It has
So-
it has a look that feels weird in Castlevania.
It's very snark talk.
Well, yeah. All right.
and action is very expensive. But man,
Yeah. All right. To the actual ranking. Oddly enough, I was not expecting to be the highest one to rank this. So if I'm going to take an average of what we've seen, let me just double check. Let's start with 7 because I feel like that is the most common thing, which actually I might as well just go over. So Bob, you said 7 to 8. Max, you said 9. Torpo said 5 to 7. I said 4 to 5, but you know, I am fine with moving that down a little bit. Let's start at 7. So at 7, we have American Gladiators, the Area 88 OVA, Cyber City 080-808, Fantasy's Kaleidoscope, Kamen Rider Black, Mortal Kombat movie, Nick Arcade, The Hunt for the Red October, and the East OVA.
okay, if there were ever 2 more perfect parallels, you could never find them. In A, Cyber City 080-808, and B, Mortal Kombat.
So,
No.
I will
Go ahead.
say, I think the original Mortal Kombat movie's legit good. I'm never gonna.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna
Yeah,
die
I'm
on
on board
hill,
with
I'm
that.
sorry.
yeah. It's
Sure.
at 7. Like it's almost in the indigo. It's at the high blue. It's a good
But,
movie.
like, in terms of like ultra violence and the way the talking is and everything, I think Cyber City 080 is a good comparison.
You know what? I didn't think about it like this, but man, I actually kind of like the dialogue in Cyber City 080-808 better than the dialogue in this. In like
It helps that
unironic,
Cyber City is shorter.
it's shorter. Also, Cyber City is just so ludicrous that it just is kind of funny. Whereas in Castlevania, I think they were trying to be somewhat serious, which kind of makes it worse.
It was so fucking weird every time Carmilla said fuck. Fuck or shit. Anytime Carmilla said it felt really weird and awkward. As someone
Yeah.
who swears a lot, I know these things.
Yeah.
Well,
the dialogue is also kind of clunky and awkward because I hate to use this word, but it's a little pretentious in its presentation. Because everybody's trying to be clever or somebody's trying to be super edgy
It's not quite, but it's similar to the issue that I have with Joss Whedon, which is the constant need to quip.
yes.
Thankfully, this is
Yes.
less terrible in that regard.
it is
But-
Whedon-esque. Oh yeah.
I cannot
Yeah.
fucking stand that about Whedon.
I
But
feel like I feel like these creepy people who do lots of a lot of quippy media just kind of congregate together. They must talk to each other a lot.
They also look similar, honestly.
Yeah.
But who knows?
God,
You've never
huh?
seen the both of them in the same room.
Exactly.
No.
But yeah, so I like Cyber City because it's meant to be schlocky. So yeah, I agree with you in that, Lolo. It's meant to be schlock.
It's the thing also, it's like, if I would rather watch one of these things, now that I think about it, I'd just rather watch Cyber City again. Like, if I'm looking at this, honestly, if I was like, here, do I want to watch Castlevania Season 1 and 2 again? Or do I want to watch pretty much anything in the 7s? I'd kind of pick, like, I would say a grand majority of these, I think I would rather... It's the thing of, like, would I rather watch it, or do I think it's a better piece of media?
Okay. You want something fun to go off of. I think East is a better interpretation of its original material than this is.
So,
Ooh, wow.
I would say yes,
yeah.
but also, it kind of was boring.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so the reason I figured parallels is the dialogue and writing for 080, but also Mortal Kombat, because it's another thing that was adapted from previous material that took some liberties, but in its case, I think did it for the better.
I did too. Now that I think, man, it's when you put it in context, like when you put these things together, that just feels really weird. Like it's
I can honestly get behind putting Mortal Kombat ahead of this for those exact reasons. Like Mortal Kombat again, like its dialogue isn't snappy, it's not witty, it's not, any of those things. But it's fun and it's schlocky, and you get some enjoyment out of it. Your soul is mine.
Yeah, your soul is mine. It's
your
great.
soul is mine. Nobody is gonna quote Castlevania ever.
So like
Ever.
The thing is, it is trying too hard to take itself seriously while also saying some goofy shit, but more importantly, having an entire part of an episode dedicated to demons talking to a priest about how bad he's fucked it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Without a
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I am not one to really front for the church in any way, shape, or form. But like this feels very much like that one atheist everybody knows who just nothing but whining about the church and how horrible the church is and religion is evil and poison. Like that's this whole series is just religion is evil and poisonous, and it's like, well, depending on who's doing it and how they're doing it. But it's very much a super like, we get it. You don't like the church. Okay.
What's up, Bob?
I was just say that this show really, really does not like religion, does it? Warren Ellis does not like religion.
No.
I
mean, so
it is a pretty known thing.
Also, another thing I should point out, another game that Warren Ellis wrote was Dead Space.
Yep.
Which, in hindsight, it all makes sense now. So I guess in that case, it's not going above 7 for certainly. So 7's our cap. Let's kind of talk about 8. N8, we have Digimon the movie, Goku Midnight Eye,
Both
Labyrinth.
episodes, but just watch one. You gotta say the whole title.
Yep, yeah. Lupin the Third, Secret of Momo, Roller Games, Sweet Home, in the first season of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is where I think it get interesting, because I think I'd rather watch Castlevania than a lot of those.
Yeah. No, same. So, like, then the question is, do you make it an 8 or a 7?
That's the question.
Because there's a range within. But, like, I find this more watchable than The Secret of Momo, at the very least.
I would agree, for the most part.
I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, is it on par with Goku Midnight Eye?
Which is an interesting phrase. It's a rare
It's like
sentence.
Goku Midnight Eye. Okay, so like I'm a little biased here. Goku Midnight Eye scratches a very specific itch for me.
Oh yeah, for me too. But also, it's funny thinking about comparing anything. Like, think of like this Castlevania show to Goku Midnight Eye.
Yeah.
Which, actually, now that the more that I think about it, this really does kind of have the energy of like a manga UK.
It does.
OVA.
Like specifically the lines, yeah.
This
This
just
is
wait
like-
until we get to seasons 3 and 4.
This is like peak anime is not for kids anymore. This ain't
100%.
dad's cartoons.
You're right.
God.
It's trying way too hard to be for adults.
Putting that into perspective, this actually yes, God. I kind of personally am leaning towards the 8 side.
What about
Let's
you,
go
X? What
8.
do you think?
You
What?
thinking 8?
8 or 7?
Me? Well, I voted for 9.
Yeah, you were
initially.
originally at 9, which
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was listening to what everybody's thinking here. Okay, so again, I am an Argento fan, deep and forever. Phenomena does drag on a bit. I can't, in all good faith, say that this was worse than that. Same with a number on like Fern Gully is just fun. Fern Gully's
Yeah,
great.
let's-
Anybody
let's-
says they don't like Fern Gully
Fern
is
Gully's
wrong.
also
Yeah,
very
let's-
horny, but more
let-
importantly, it has Tim Curry.
let's go
Exactly.
over. Yeah, let's quick just for the people at home. Stuff that's at 9 is Clash of the Titans, Fern
Yes.
Gully, Flash Gordon, a show or game we did in Retro and Grapsy that was basically a motion comic. Golgo 13, Carlisle no Yabu, first season of Mega Man, Phenomena, Sonic OVA, Sukuban Deka's First, Pirates of the Dark Water, Tokyo Shirei Soul Brain, Tron, and East 2.
I would definitely watch this over any of those.
I would agree. Also, 9 has enough stuff as it is.
Like, there's some good stuff in 9, but ultimately, as a whole, looking at the whole product, I would definitely watch this over those.
Yeah,
All right. Well, then that kind of brings us to
It's
7 and 8. So
7 and 8.
I'd put
think
it
we're
in 8.
close
I
to
wouldn't
8
put
right
it in
now.
7.
Let's go to 8.
I think kind of the discussion that we're having, it seems like putting it closer to 8. It seems like 8 would be the more accurate thing for what we've been saying.
It's not on par with Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing, is like Cyber City Oedo and Mortal Kombat are really what they're like, nah.
All right. So let's put it at 8.
I could see this on the same level as Goku Midnight Eye in terms of like tone.
Yeah.
That there.
Goku Midnight didn't feel like it was trying too hard.
I remember the second episode.
I don't remember the second.
That was
I
the one
love
that got a
this
little.
sweet.
Yeah, that was that one got a little sexual salty. Yeah. Also, the first episode with that was more horny than also it was violent.
Okay, but what about Motorcycle Lady? That was the peak of writing.
That's just good design.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And now the only problem is now I'm just thinking of Angel Cop again.
Like this, all things considered, this is mostly just violent and angry. It was not really horny.
Not yet.
No, okay, yes.
Okay, but even
Let's
then,
not talk about femdom right now, though.
Yes.
Yes.
So yes, of season 1 and 2, no, it is not sexual at all. Actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, no, they largely kind of just avoided that shit.
Yeah. The first 2 seasons is all about the politics, all about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
vampires.
Also, fuck the church. Don't forget, fuck the church. Literally,
Yes, and fuck the church.
the entire first season's about fuck the church.
Yeah.
I got really annoyed watching through it again because that's literally all it was.
It's like
Yeah.
again, I'm not a big religious person, but it's that person that who's like a diehard atheist, and all they do is post about how they hate religion. That's pretty much this.
Yeah. So point being, I think we're gonna put this at 8.
Mhm.
Okay. So going through, definitely Gore Plus, because this is probably one of the more
Dear
gory shows that I've
fucking
seen.
It is
Gore plus, plus,
incredibly
plus.
gory.
Plus.
Yeah, actually plus. Yeah.
It
E
is.
plus
It is.
plus.
Yeah. It is pure. It's just a shitload of
Uh,
gore.
Wait, don't I have a thing that? Oh, also for me, particularly season 1,
There's a lot of vomiting.
yeah, in the first, there are 4 episodes, and 3 of them have it, and then the 4th one has discussion of it. That was like when speaking of the demon talking to the church is like, it's like after like the things in the first 3 seasons, thing I'm watching that, and it discusses like the demon says something like your actions just make us puke. I'm like, God damn it! It's like why?
Yeah, exactly.
There's also Sifa after she gets unpetrified.
Yeah, that's in the
first
first
thing she
season.
does. Yeah, is just
Yeah.
pork up chunks.
Like one of the first things you see Trevor do. It's just another thing of Trevor in the second episode.
And it's weird because, Castlevania is not really that much of an adult series. I mean, sure, there's blood, there's like discussion religion, but they're kind of making up a lot here,
Yeah.
It is
Also
more now, it's
the
projecting.
Also, a lot of talking about having sex with sheep.
Oh, that was the ending of the first episode, I might add. That is, and
I thought
then
it
it
was the start
ties
of the
into the
second.
start of the second episode.
Yeah.
No. It's the end of the first and goes into the second.
Great. Also, finally,
Yeah, there's
I have
some lovely classist portrayals, let's say.
Yeah. Also,
Warren Ellis has feelings about the unwashed masses, as we learn in season 1.
also, I finally get a use of the excessive profanity tag.
Yeah.
That sounds fucking ridiculous.
Even
just
by
looking through.
my own previous standards, it curses way too goddamn much.
I mean, okay, so like, I swear more than the show, but my problem is an issue I have with a lot of media is it doesn't feel natural.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not used to punctuate. It's just used to be edgy.
Let's see. Is there anything we want to call out in music, charm, cinematography, storytelling, action, and art?
Problem is music is there's one good song, but like action and art, yes.
I feel, yeah, because those two I get thumbs up. Wasted potential, I think, for music is what I'd call it.
Yeah, there's like that one remix of Bloody Tears, and that's it, right?
Yes.
It's a really good mix too. It's a really good arrangement.
Yeah, it would have been nice if I didn't get spoiled on it. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, that sounds like him.
Yeah. Hatchway's storytelling, I might give a thumbs down.
Yeah.
Oops, what the hell?
You know what?
Oh, there.
Personally, I would put more wasted potential than just straight up a thumbs down. But...
Yeah, naturally that, I think, is more accurate.
I feel like the whole show is just a lot of wasted potential.
Yeah.
Just everything about it is like, there's something cool that could have been here, and then it's just like, but what if we didn't do something good with it?
Yeah. Any yay or nay? Pacing.
Pacing. Oh Lord.
All right. Yeah, I think that'll do it.
Yeah, I'm totally out.
Yeah, so I can't really think of any other charms for that. So that's I think that is good for seasons 1 and 2 of Castlevania. We'll put it at an 8.
It's true. We can save Someone's Got a Fetish for next time.
Yeah. All right. So I guess with that, that'll do it for this. Bob, is there anything you want to plug?
Yes, I'd like to plug the Top 47,858 Games of All Time podcast here on Hardcore Gaming 101. It is a game where we take the games you give us and we rank them on a big list. Nobody's done that before. It's our idea. It's entirely original. I don't know what you're talking about. Feel free to give us a listen, and if you like us, give us some games to review.
All right.
And you can find...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm saying you can find that at the Hardcore Gaming 101 website.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a link?
Yeah, let me find a link real quick. Or should I put it? Just
you can just put it in this little... You can put it somewhere. I'll find it. All right. So, there's that. Axe, is there anything you want to plug?
Yes, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and your local SPCA or animal shelter. Please adopt, don't shop.
Torpo?
Twitch.tv/TorpidTypist and at TorpidTypist on Twitter. And I would like to plug the Whole Put in God brand by Isaac. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yes.
Yeah, you got it.
So, next time we are going to be discussing seasons 3 and 4 of this show. Which, if you thought we had things to talk about for this set, seasons 3 and 4, there's a lot to discuss in seasons 3 and 4 of Castlevania.
Opinions will fly.
So yes, that'll be it for this episode. So thank you all for listening.
Thank me.
If you would like to see the list in which we have ranked every single thing we've done for Media Delta, you can go to r3.ldp.life in your browser. If you would like to watch the sister show that determines what could show up on Media Delta, that's Retro Rank Rhapsody, you can watch it live on Twitch at twitch.tv/LoloToPuzzlo or on YouTube at youtube.ldp.life. If you would like to discuss this episode with others, please join our Discord server by going to discord.ldp.life in your browser, which should give you a link. Thank you again for listening.